Hello, my name is Craig Rainey, and I've been in the construction industry for more than 40 years. When homeowners tell me the story of their project, oftentimes it sounds like this. It doesn't have to be that way.
Oh, wise guy, eh?
And most builders would say that. Welcome to Remodeling Wisdom. I'm Craig Rainey. Let's get started.
Why do you suppose the reputation of the residential remodeling industry in the United States, why do you suppose it's so low? Why is there so much graft and so many lawsuits and so much trouble with homeowners? Why do homeowners spend so much time and effort vetting trades and vetting remodeling contractors so that they don't get ripped off and so that the work gets done? Why do you suppose that is? The biggest reason I have the following that I have with this particular program is because of the difficulties that we homeowners face when we're wanting to do something crazy like remodel our house. And so we are in part 3 of the series, How to Manage Your Remodel Project Yourself. And part 3, we're gonna cover a little construction 101. One of the things I said last episode is we're gonna do that in part 4. We're gonna do it now. The construction 101 that I was referring to is more management 101. Some things you're going to need to know as you're running these trades and running your project and making sure that when you reach substantial completion that your project is the project hasn't outrun the money. So you still got some left. But on this one, what we're going to do is, as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to select our tradespeople and where we're going to buy our materials from and some things that you're going to need to know to make sure that you get the right people and the right materials on your project. And we're going to boil this down to the level where you don't have to be a construction expert to do it. And I've got some tips for you on that. And I think it's going to be helpful. Before we get started, let me handle a little housekeeping. First off, thank you. You have a lot of choices when it comes to advice on remodeling, and there are a lot of very talented, skilled people out there that are providing that. And I want to thank you for picking me, for taking this time to share some time with me. It's just you and me, and I promise that I'm going to do everything I can to make this beneficial for you. Secondly is please hit the like, follow, subscribe, whatever the button is. Every platform's different. And that way you'll know when I have a new episode coming out. And, I know a lot of my listeners, they come and go. And they get keenly interested during their project. And after the project is over, the interest starts to wane and they'll go to something else. And that's fine. This is, as I mentioned, this is also a tool. This is a crash course where if you're going to use a remodeling contractor, it'll give you some insight on what they're up against and what they face. I don't truly believe that most people that are in the construction business are mean-spirited or crooks or anything. I think they're good people that lack training and ability and some knowledge. And like most homeowners, they believe that the construction industry is simple, and it's not. So this podcast is set up so that I can give you some inside information so you can be alerted to that sort of thing if you run into somebody who's underqualified to do what you need them to do, and so you can recognize that. So anyway, I do encourage you to hit the like, subscribe, that kind of thing, and so that way you'll know while this information is of use to you when we have a new episode that's coming out. And finally, if you want to get hold of me, as I mentioned, you usually cannot get hold of a broadcaster directly through the comments. That's usually for the listeners to talk amongst themselves or to sharpshoot or badmouth the broadcaster. If you want to get hold of me, the best way is get hold of me on my email, which is craig@craigrainey.com. And I answer those emails. I also, as I've mentioned several times, I I get some great episode ideas from that, and several times I've done that. One of my favorites, I had somebody from Canada that asked me a question. We did an episode on that, and it was beneficial. It was a lot of fun. So I like the interaction. And if you want to learn anything about all things that are Craig Rainey, I encourage you to cyberstalk me at craigrainey.com, which is my main website. So that being said, let's move forward. Let's get going. I'm going to open this by talking about quality of materials and quality of labor. Because at this point, as I mentioned, at this point, hopefully you have put together your design drawing. And let me touch on that just for a second. I'm not going to belabor it. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were talking about that they were getting bids to build a garage. And when their house was built, they didn't build a garage. They wanted to save the money. Now they're looking at building it because they want to sell the house, and that's a big deal because every other house in the neighborhood has a garage. But when they did the design, and this is something they should have considered, they should have had their architect, I would say a better architect. Somebody would say, look, this is common. If you want to sell in this neighborhood, you're going to have at least what everybody else has. And a garage is one of those, it's a biggie. So anyway, the point is that they were saying, yeah, this garage, they got a bid for $80,000 to build this garage. And of course I asked, I said, well, how big a garage is it? I don't know. No dimensions? No. 2-car garage? Well, I'm sure it's 2-car garage. Okay. And, where did they get the 80,000? Do they have a design drawing on this? And they said, no, they don't. Well, how do you bid a garage or anything else without knowing how big it is, what it's made from, with how many garage doors are on it, how many windows, insulation, electrical, what kind of roof? How are you going to know? How do you know these things if you don't have a drawing? And so many people get bids from remodeling contractors by walking them through the house and saying, look, we want a kitchen, want a bath, want this, want that. How much does it cost? Well, as a DIYer, get your design drawing. You have to have that because there's no way that your trades are going to be able to do the work just by you trying to explain it to them. I can explain it to my trades because I am a 4 decades plus experienced general contractor, and I can tell all of my trades, electrician, look, I need to have 3-way switches here. I need to have, I'm using these 4-inch LED trims. I can explain this to them. Now, they're only going to retain 10% of what I say. So even I will use construction drawings with my trades. I will say, okay, with my electrician, here's my electrical schematic, here's my diagram, this is what I need you to build. And it has all the call outs of every material that we're going to do. I'm not using recessed cans, I'm using these 4-inch LED disc trims. We got 3-way switches here, we're going Decora switches, we're not going to go with the standard, we do this, all that stuff is outlined with my cabinets. This is where my cabinets are going to be set up. This is the type we're going to use. These are the spacers and the fillers we're going to use. With my painters. Look, this is the type of texture we're going to have. These are the paint colors. Here are my coats. You need to have all these things decided upon. Selecting your finishes is so important. And by finishes, I'm talking about the stuff that is not structure, the stuff that you're not painting over or covering over. That's whatever you're painting and covering over, those are your finishes. Tile, flooring, countertops, cabinets, paint color, your fixtures, plumbing and electrical. These are your finishes, and you need to know what you're going to have, and you need to buy those. And again, I'll go back to it because this is part of what we're saying. As I said last episode, you have to purchase all those things before you break ground. Now, you can't purchase the counter. You can purchase the countertops, you can pick the slab, but you can't actually pay for them to install it until they get it done, because typically that's their process. And again, countertops is they'll say, okay, well, based on your drawing, it looks like you're going to have this many slabs, and so you're going to need to buy this number of slabs. And typically what happens is at the end of the job, they're going to send you a bill for whatever overage there is. And I've never seen anybody give a refund, but typically that's what happens. So, but with everything else, you can pre-order your cabinets. For me, it takes between 8 and 12 weeks, depending on where I get them. You're going to have to order your tile. You're going to have to figure all of your quantities on that, and we'll get into that here in just a second, how you're going to do that. Paint, you're going to have to pick your paint and pick your paint colors and what type of paint you're going to use, and we're going to cover that here in a few minutes. So these finishes, these are the things that are you're going to have to know. And the reason I don't worry too much about the building materials is because you're not going to pre-buy your lumber and have it sitting around. If you're pouring concrete, you're going to have a takeoff on it. A lot of lumber yards will do takeoff, so they'll give you a material list. But the thing is, if you're doing something that big where you're pouring concrete, you're not going to drop that frame package until that concrete has been poured. Because usually after it's poured in our part of the country, 3 to 7 days, it's got to cure until you can build on it. During the summer, it's more like 3. But anyway, those things. But on your finishes typically take time to arrive. So you're going to need even tile. Sometimes it's 7 to 14 days before you get the tile you want if it's special order. If you're going with somebody like ProSource or one of these one-stop shops, they don't keep any inventory. So they're going to have to order this, and they're going to have to get it in. So you have to allow yourself that time. You don't want to lengthen your job by having to stop everything to wait till those materials get there. So get those there, and if it's a pretty good sized job, you can either put those materials in your garage or get a Connex container or something and put them in there to store it, or a storage unit. Just make sure that you have all that selected, purchased, and on hand as you go. It's important. I'm talking your fixtures, electrical, plumbing, everything. Just get everything. Have it all stocked and inventoried and ready to go. So, but getting off the design, let's move forward. Let's talk a little bit about how you're going to pick your vendors. So we have our drawing. We know what our scope of work is. We know what our budget is. We know that we're going to have to, and by the way, this is tough for somebody without a lot of experience. To come up with a budget, you say, okay, well, Craig, how am I going to get a budget if I don't know how much my electrician is going to charge, or my plumber is going to charge, or my HVAC contractor is going to charge? How do I know what my budget is going to be? That's part of your due diligence when you're doing your when you're doing your plan. I recommend that you get a designer that has some experience in costing jobs and knowing what things cost. You could also start selecting your trades. And we're going to talk about that, but you can start selecting your trades right away and say, okay, well, this is going to be my plumber, and start interviewing that company and make sure that they're the right for you. And at some point, then you say, okay, well, this is what my what my plumbing is. What do you think that bid's going to be? Where are we going to come in on that? And of course, you've got finishes, which are included in this, but let's not get turned around. So establishing your budget is going to take some time, and it could be that what you figured your budget was going to be, and once the design is done, that you're going to exceed that budget. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to do a redesign. You're going to have to rethink your project and say, okay, well, we're going to have to reduce the scope because of the money, or you're going to have to go get more money. Those are your two options. But let's talk about selecting those trades. I'm already being frustrating enough for you because we're throwing some extra stuff in, but let's just do that. So when you're selecting your trades, here are some basic things you want to look at, and I'm going to just give you some trades and tell you what I look for when I'm doing that. Because as I mentioned, the process I go through to vet trades is completely different than the one you do, and so I typically will interview these tradespeople. I will go look at their work, and there are certain things that I'm going to look at, and I'm going to cover a few trades. This won't take too long to get through, but I'm going to cover a few trades. You might want to take some notes because this is something that you're going to want to do. So let's start off with, let's just say painters, since we were talking about painters. A couple things a few things that painters do that are wrong, and even the experienced ones do it. A lot of times they don't seem to know the difference between caulk and putty. And so when do you use caulk and when do you use putty, and what's the proper way to use both? Okay, well, if you have nail holes, let's say that you've got wooden material or whatever it is, and you're going to paint it, whether it's using a trim gun on siding or on siding or on interior trim, you're going to putty nail holes. You're not going to caulk them. The reason for it is because caulk shrinks. And I've had somebody ask me, so why does caulk shrink, and why don't they work on that where caulk doesn't shrink to where it, the reason it's a benefit to you for caulk to shrink is because when you're using caulk and let's just, in your mind, you've got a corner, inside corner, and you've got to caulk it. Typically, what I see is a painter. They will pull that caulk gun down that corner, and then they'll take a finger and they'll just wipe all the extra off all the way down, and so you've got this rounded corner. It's a small rounded corner because it's in there, but you can still see it, and you can see where that caulk is climbing up the lumber outside of the joint. When my painters work, they use a wet rag and they wipe the additional caulk off the lumber. They do not keep that caulk on there. I don't want to see any caulk outside of the joint. None. Zero. And that includes sheetrock. Whenever you're doing your texture on sheetrock, a lot of times they'll run caulk down those corners and they'll do it with a finger. I'm the same way. I want you to get a wet rag. I don't want any caulk on my sheetrock. I want it in the joint only. So those things you have to look for. And when you're talking to a painter and you're looking at their work, if you see marks where you say, well, this caulk joint is rounded, you ask them, why don't you use a wet rag when you're doing your caulk? Is this a one-off? Is this something you guys do all the time? If they look at you with a blank expression, find another painter, because in paint, prep is 90% of how well it's going to last and how good it's going to look. Next thing is oil versus latex. I do all of my walls in latex. I like flat. It varies. People talk about semi-gloss because, like in a bathrooms or wherever else, or a kid's rooms because it wipes off. Because of polymer technology, your flat paint is going to wipe off as well and clean as well as a semi-gloss surface or a satin surface. Just go with flat. And the reason you go with flat is this, because flat paint does not show the defects of the construction of your home. And if let's say, I'm trying to give you something that this would be easier if we were in video, I could show you this. But if you've ever looked down a wall and you can see the in and out, you can see the studs behind it, where the wall was framed and there's a zigzag going as you're going down the wall. Well, that's going to happen anywhere. It's just the way it is, because not many framers know how to crown their studs. And I'm not going to go into it because it's pretty technical, but basically lumber has three faults to it: the bow, crown, and a cup. So what we do as carpenters is we try to correct those faults every time that we build. And one of the ways is on the crown, which is, in other words, when you're looking at the studs and you're looking down the wall, when it's wavy, that is a function of crown. So you want to make sure your studs are all crowned in one direction. So the crown up goes, either into the wall or out the other direction, but they all have to be the same. Well, anyway, the point is that if somebody doesn't crown their studs, or even if they do, lumber is lumber. If you use a semi-gloss or a satin or any sheen on a wall, you're going to see those faults more obviously than with flat. Flat is going to cover those faults easier or more effectively. So go with flat on the walls and your ceilings, and then and latex, and go with oil on your trim and doors. Do not put latex on your doors and on your trim. Go with oil. And I typically, some call it eggshell. It's a satin. With Sherwin-Williams, who I use pretty regularly, and I'll tell you why here in a second, why I use them. Sherwin-Williams, they offer a good high quality oil, and they call it eggshell. And it's got kind of a sheen to it, but it's not a semi-gloss. So a satin finish in latex is between a flat and a semi-gloss, and that's pretty much where you want to go. You don't need really shiny trim or shiny doors, again, because that will show any flaws you have in it. But anyway, so go with that. But one of the things I want you to do is when you're talking to your painter, just ask them, say, so do you use latex on your trim? And if they say, well, yeah, I do, well, tell me why. Now, you don't have to know the answer to this, to ask these questions. I want you to read these folks. I want you to see how confident they are. And if you tell them you want oil on there, and they're going to say, well, the reason we don't do it is oil is more expensive. Okay, I'll accept that. Because a lot of times homeowners and painters, they're going to go with the cheapest thing they can because they think the cheapest price is going to get the job. Because, again, that's how most homeowners select their painters, based on cheap. So they're going to reduce cost by using a lesser material. But anyway, those are the or two of the three. One is caulk versus putty. Second one is oil versus latex. And here's the other one. Ask them when they're, and let's say that you're in almost any remodel you're going to do, you're going to tear off sheetrock or take off wallpaper. So you're going to have to tape, float, texture it, and paint it again. So one of the things you want to ask them is you want to say, do you prime your texture when you shoot your texture on the wall? Now, whether it's an orange peel or level 5, doesn't matter. Do you prime that before you paint it? And if they tell you that no, because the paint has primer in it, find somebody else. Do not use paint that has primer in it. Behr Premium Plus is horrible paint if you use it as primer. Primer serves one purpose. It creates a surface to which paint will stick. That's all it does. And when you put the primer in the paint, it doesn't do its job. So if you're going to use Behr Premium Plus, you're going to pay more, but you still got to primer that wall, and then you paint it so that the paint will stick to it. Because paint doesn't like sticking to texture or sheetrock or lumber. So that's why you primer it. So the three things that we're going to focus on with our painters is caulk versus putty. Do you caulk nail holes or do you putty them? How do you look at the corners on the job, because you're gonna go interview them, look at what they're doing, and if they're using fingers to do it, you don't want them. Make sure there's no caulk outside of the joint, and finally, make sure they prime their texture. After they shoot texture, they prime it. Let me give you one more. I'll say let's go to sheetrock, because a lot of times your painter will not do the texture. Your sheetrocker will do it, so it still applies, but you need to make sure that if your painter or whomever is doing the, and let's say you're going to do it, you're hanging sheetrock, 5/8 inch sheetrock goes on the ceiling, 1/2 inch sheetrock goes on the walls. Okay, don't put 1/2 inch sheetrock on your ceilings. A lot of these newer homes, they put their joist on 24 inch centers, and 1/2 inch sheetrock will sag in between it, and you'll find that you'll have wavy ceilings. So you want to make sure that you use 5/8 sheetrock, and plus 5/8. If you want fire code, 5/8 is fire code. Not all 5/8 is fire code, but fire code comes as 5/8. Anyway, so next thing is when you're hanging sheetrock, do they hang it horizontally or vertically? And I think I told you a story about this a couple episodes ago where I was talking to a painter who hangs sheetrock, and I said, and I was talking to some engineer. It was a really cool little product he was putting together to do corners, and he was using them in 4 feet. I said, well, look, we hang sheetrock horizontally, left to right. We don't hang 8-foot sheets with the 8 foot up and the 4 foot left to right. He goes, oh, and there's a painter right across from me that is a trade show. I said, hey, you tell him, right? And he goes, I said, which way do you hang your sheetrock? He goes, up and down. I said, okay, he's not a sheetrocker, but I'm telling you right now, always hang your sheetrock horizontally and start at the top, by the way. Start at the ceiling and work your way down. Because I have a friend of mine that did that. He was hanging sheetrock, I think in his garage or somewhere. And so he sat on the first piece on the floor, and he was an inch, right at an inch low off the ceiling. And so he had to put a little strip in there. You always run your ceiling, you do your top row first. Next to your ceiling, you do your ceiling first, then you put your walls, you put your top in first. Horizontally, you want to cross grain that. So just make sure that they know that they're going to cross grain it. Anybody that runs their sheetrock with the 8 foot up and down, the 4 foot left and right, they don't know what they're doing. And finally, when you're doing tape and float, or your painter's doing tape and float, make sure they double skim. Okay, what is that? Okay, so you're gonna, once your sheetrock is up, you put a layer of mud, you put the paper on, and then you put a layer of mud over the top. You smooth that out. And then what you should do is most painters will sand it, and they're done, then they'll shoot texture. Once you sand it, make them hit it with another skim of mud. Anytime you walk into a house or in your house and you're seeing straight joints next to the corners, these tape joints, the reason you see the tape is because somebody did not double skim that tape. They single skimmed it, hit it with texture, primer painted it, and that's it. And you have to double skim. So these are things, take notes on this. These are things that I demand of my trades. And with carpenters, let's talk about carpenters. I will generally select carpenters based on the tools I see in their truck. And if I see somebody that's got a nail gun compressor package they got from Home Depot or Lowe's where you can pick them up for $350, I will not use those folks, because that indicates to me that they don't know what the value of quality equipment is. And it also means they're broke. And if they're broke, they're not successful. If they're not successful, they're not experienced. So these things all add together. Avoid the Ryobis, avoid Black & Decker. If they've got Ryobi or Black & Decker in their truck, get somebody else. If they've got a compressor that doesn't need oil, that's not a high capacity compressor. Just avoid those folks. They don't know what they're doing, but getting to ask them some questions. But look at their tools. That's the first thing I do. I a lot of times will ask them trick questions, which is not trick questions to people who know what they're doing. But I'll say, okay, so what is the length of an 8-foot stud? Well, most people think that an 8-foot stud would be 96 inches because that's 8 feet. It is not. An 8-foot stud is 92 5/8 inches long. And the reason for it is once you add your sole plate, your double top plate, it's you exceed the 96 inches. But anyway, you need to ask them that so they know. So what is the length of an 8-foot 2x4 stud? And they'll tell you, if they say 96 inches, find somebody else. It's 92 5/8. You have to know these things. 9 foot, 104 5/8. It's just these are the things they have to know. And in your interview, if they don't know it, don't take the chance just because they're going to be cheap. They're cheap because they don't know anything. Next thing is if you've got an interior trim, somebody's going to do your interior trim, ask them, how do you hang doors? Do you hang it on the trim? How do you do it? Because this started with tract homes and production builders. They started, and you'll find a lot of homes that are done this way. What these interior trim guys will do is they will hang they'll put the trim on the door, and then they'll shoot the nails into the wall by adjusting the reveal. The reveal is the space between the door and the jamb. So they'll adjust that, and then they'll shoot it, and then they'll shoot the trim on the other side. Well, the first time somebody gets mad and slams a door, or the weather changes, that door won't open. It's important that everybody hangs doors on the frame with screws. So just ask them what they're doing. And believe me, I had a guy that I was hiring for a trim carpenter, and he'd done a lot of trim. And anyway, so I was interviewing him to do some trim work for my remodeling company, and I asked him, I said, so walk me through how you hang doors. And he started talking about how he hangs doors on trim. And I said, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. He goes, I've been doing it that way for 12 years. I said, you've been doing it wrong for 12 years. And anyway, so he did go to work with me. He was a good trim guy, except he didn't know what he was doing on doors. And he changed. And so my doors open all the time. They close all the time. They're solid. They are screwed into framing. It's not a piece of 2 3/8 colonial trim that's holding my door there. It's just it's how it's supposed to be done. But you want to ask them, when you hang a door, do you hang it on the trim or do you hang it on the frame? And I'm walk you through it. And then the last thing I ask people is what the difference between let me. I'm not going to go plumbing level with you on this thing because it's too technical for most carpenters. Most carpenters do not know this. The difference between plumb and level. And I'll just tell you what it is. Level is when you put your 4-foot level against a wall. And by the way, a level can only accurately measure the levelness of twice its length. So if you've got somebody looking at an 8-foot wall and they've got a little alligator level and they put it against there, one of these little 6-inch levels, they're only finding the accuracy of 1 foot. And as I talked about with the flaws that are in lumber, that you could have lumber that has a crown in it, and that's not going to tell you what. So anyway, but if you are going to level, a level will only level twice its length. So I use a 4-foot level, it'll level an 8-foot wall. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about this. When I am framing a house, I use the level on the first day, and then I put it away. And a lot of times I don't even use it at all. It just depends. I'll use it when I hang doors, but other than that, the reason for it is because there are no houses anywhere. There's not a house anywhere that is perfectly level. There's nothing short of NASA that could level a house perfectly, and I've never seen NASA on a job site. So the difference between level and plumb is this. If I'm going to build an addition onto a house, and this room addition is going to be, let's say, 16 by 12, or it doesn't matter what the length is or what the size is, I am going to match it to whatever the house looks like. If that house is out of level, I'm going to match it. My room addition is going to be out of level too, but it will be plumb. It will be plumb. So it will match the existing structure. So you put a level on something, you go, well, this room addition looks all bad because it's not level. Well, your house isn't level. And if the carpenter knows what they're doing, they are using arithmetic to get their number. Now, again, if you're putting that in a 12 or 16 foot wall and it's not level, but it is plumb, you still want to level your doorways so that your doors don't swing open and so that, so they'll fit. There are things you have to do, but you have to know the difference. And the reason I'm saying this is if your carpenter knows what he or she is doing, this question will not perplex them. They'll know this. I mean, I'm not some super genius in construction. This, when I was growing up, this is construction 101. These are things that you had to know or you couldn't work in the industry. Now, the industry has changed. The industry has changed to the point that now the least qualified amongst us is doing most technical work, which means that's right, the job quality is bad. I live in a very nice house in a very expensive neighborhood, and my house in a lot of ways is a piece of junk because the people that built it were not qualified. I have doors. I've replaced all my doors because I remodel. All my doors were replaced, and every one of them was hung on the trim. Every single one. Just give you an example. So, I mean, it's everywhere, but you don't want to be a part of that. Okay, so let's talk about your licensed trades: electricians, plumbers, and HVAC. HVAC is your air conditioner heating contractor. I don't hire logo vans. I don't go to ABC electrician or ABC air conditioning and heating. I don't go to them. They're going to charge me full retail first off. And this is one of the times where I do look at price. They're going to charge me full retail. And the reason they are able to do that is because they know that the general contractor who is using a contractor trade, which is the ones I use contractor trades, not retail trades, that what's happening is that contractor trades charging them a certain amount, and that contractor is marking it up. Your retail trades are going with the general contractor markup from the beginning. So they're making their money on what they would normally make if they were a contractor trade, plus they're marking it up, putting that margin in case, as if they were a general contractor to do it too. So you want to get good licensed trades, but you want to get contractor trades. The best place to get them is go to a construction site. When you see somebody there, go to a construction site and say, hey, I've got a job going on. Are you interested? Can I get your card? Get them, and don't just get one. Get 1, 2, or 3. If the general contractor, particularly if it's a pretty good sized builder, if the general contractor is using them, they're probably good. It depends if it's a single remodel guy and you go out there and it's some beat up truck and some guy's walking in and out of there and he's on his phone or, drinking a beer or whatever. You may not want to go with that guy, but go to some of the bigger developments and just go up there and talk to him. Say, hey, you're an electrician. I've got a job. Are you interested in looking at it? Give me your card. I'll give you a call. And that's how you do it. But don't go with the logo vans. Go with somebody that's, they might have a licensed, a DOT number on their truck or something. That's fine. But I'm just talking about, you don't want to go with the big, air conditioning, plumbing, heating company that's advertising on TV. Those are not the people that you want to call to get on your job. It'll bust your budget. Make sure they are licensed. That's number 2. So logo van, make sure they're licensed. And here's a biggie. And mainly with your AC contractors, ask them what their preferred brand is. Some people are trained. Some companies are Carrier. I like Carrier myself. They're kind of the granddaddy. They've been around forever. I like Carrier. I'm not sure where it is elsewhere, but here in Texas, avoid Goodman. If they install Goodman equipment, it's because it's cheap. And they'll tell you, oh, it's just as good. It is not just as good. It is not. This is from a general contractor. I don't put Goodman in any job I do. Does it save me money? Some. But my cost to put in a unit is pretty inexpensive from a contractor's point of view. The $15,000, $16,000 retail that you're going to pay for your new AC unit from a big logo van, I could do the same thing for about $8,000 as a builder. So, find those folks and but ask them. And the reason I say ask them what their brand is because if they don't really specialize in a brand, chances are they aren't very good at what they do, because most of the contractor trades that I work with, and these aren't retail, these are contractor trades, they have some type of deal with a major manufacturer, whether it's Carrier, Train, American Standard, whoever it may be, you want to go with that person that's got that relationship, because there's a good chance that they have some factory training with them. There's a good chance that when they are carrying them, that they're getting the benefit of contractor support from that manufacturer. So that means you're not left totally in the dark on it. And I've seen some bad things happen, but those are the big things. And your electricians, your plumbers, your HVAC, those are the people that know logo vans, make sure they're licensed. Find out if they have a preferred brand. Now, it's hard to do with electricians and plumbers, because it really varies on that. But your HVAC, that'll definitely work. And anyway, so those are the things you need to look out for with your trades. And I've listed just a few. Those you get the general idea. Do a little bit of research. We talked about the danger of YouTube videos last time about the swimming pool and everything else. So, we don't have to discuss that, but you can get some good, valuable information off YouTube. Just make sure that you look at several videos. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter if that video comes out from Home Depot or from a manufacturer. It's not always right. I saw one video that was talking about installing windows, and I am a window dealer for a brand here in Texas. And I started off in my younger days, I was a window installer, factory trained and certified window installer for this company. Later, I sold them. Later, I became a dealer because I really believe in them. Anyway, so the things they were talking about on installing these windows were absolutely wrong. Couldn't be more wrong, even to the point of putting expandable foam in those cracks between the windows and the frame. Never do that. Never use that expanding foam anywhere. No doors, no windows. I don't use it anywhere. It's a really bad idea, because it doesn't stop expanding for some time, and it will knock your window out of plumb and make it where it won't work at times. And same thing with the door. Your doors won't open anymore. Never use that expandable foam. And this company was talking about doing it. And it's a big major company. You've heard of them. And in this video, they said, once you do this, put the foam in there. Come on, man. Do not do that. Don't be that guy. Anyway, so be careful with the videos that you watch, because even the reputable companies are misguided in a lot of ways. I'm going to give you one more example of this. I don't ever put gable vents in any house that I build, or any addition I put in, which is a gable vent is up in the top pointy part of the, top point of the roof. They got this little air vent that goes into the attic. I never put those in. And the reason I don't is because they will completely, I can't, not the word betray isn't good, but it will completely undo what you're trying to get done to vent your attic properly. And just really quickly, I'll just tell you why. And I got, by the way, where did I get this? From an HVAC class, a class on air conditioning. And they were talking about ventilation and how it works. That's where I got it from. Certified. It was a certified class. Air is lazy. It's inherently lazy. Air will take the path of least resistance. So if you put a gable vent into the front gable wall of the house, or back, or both, whatever it may be, and if you have ridge vents, which almost every house now, when your shingles are put in, they put ridge vents in, what's going to happen is the ridge vent, as heat rises, it's going to pull air through that ridge vent, and it's going to pull air into your gable vents. It's going to draw air into your attic through your gable vents instead of through the eave vents. How the flow should go is air comes in through the eaves, goes up to the attic, and out through the top through the gable vents, or I'm sorry, through the ridge vents. If you have gable vents, the air will never pull from your eave. It will pull from those gable vents. So instead of the gable vents, you say, oh, it blows out and outside, it will suck air into your attic. And so you're only ventilating the top third of your attic instead of the whole thing. So little things like that. So be careful with the with the videos that you watch, because they'll give you bad information. Yes, I'm an expert. I've been doing this for years and years and years. I've got a lot of training. I've got a lot of experience. But keep in mind, the context of this series is so you can run the project yourself. If you want to hire me, great. If you're in the area, that's fine. But that's not what our point is here. Our point is to try to do it ourselves, keep our money safe, make sure we get the right trades on there. So what I'm saying is just be careful with videos, YouTube videos, or any other kind of video. They can be misleading. So watch more than one. and see what information coincides, make sure that some of this stuff is consistent from one to the other. Now, picking materials, we talked about Goodman air conditioning. And man, I hate to badmouth anybody, but you don't want to buy your materials and your equipment and your residential machinery. You don't want to buy it based on price. Now, again, there's always a good, better, best, as Sears used to say, but there you want to find something that's a good, solid upper middle of the road, because there's a point of diminishing returns. And let's go back to the HVAC thing. There are a lot of studies, and let's go back. I talked earlier, I think it was last episode, about a 20 SEER scroller unit, a Carrier 20 SEER scroller unit. And this is top of the line. But if you look at SEER has to do with the efficiency of that unit and how it performs under certain conditions. And there is no information, and there are AC guys going to argue with me, but there is no information that it's unequivocal that anything above 14 to 16 SEER is going to help you at all. Nothing above that. You throw 20 at it. I've got a lot of my buddies who are big, reputable, they've got the expertise in AC that I've got in construction. And they say, look, I don't put anything above 16 SEER in here, because the fact is you're wasting money. Every time you go up on a level of SEER, it's going to add another $3,000 or $4,000 to that unit and to that installation, but they're not going to see the benefit. So I'm using this example to say this: the biggest and the best, and the bigger number doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be. It's not necessarily going to be what you need, and so you need to be careful when you're buying these things. When you're buying lumber, don't buy your lumber at a box store. The lumber is really, well, there are three things. I do not buy lumber at a box store. I'm not going to name a name. You know who I'm talking about. I don't buy them at a box store unless I need just one or two pieces. If I'm going to frame something, or I've got a pretty good sized package that's going to be dropped on the ground so I can build something, I will go to a lumber yard. And the reason I go to a lumber yard, a contractor's lumber yard, is because they're going to do three things for me that these box stores are not going to do. Number one, I'm going to get a better quality of lumber. These box stores get the crappiest lumber there is because they lose money on lumber sales. They make their money on everything else, but they lose money on lumber sales. So they get the worst. They get the worst lumber that they can find, and that's what they stock. These other lumber yards, they're dealing with contractors. When you go to a bona fide lumber yard, they're dealing with general contractors who are not going to put up with that, because for a general contractor, if I frame a house with crappy lumber, and I happen to get a big load of hem fir or something like that, which is something I don't use, or yellow pine that's all twisted up, whatever it may be, I get to pay for that for the rest of the job. I have to correct that, because as that lumber sits and dries, it moves. And so now I've got to go through, and before I do my sheetrock, I've got to go through and put shims and blocks in my wall so they'll be straight, so my sheetrock lays straight. So it costs me money and time. These lumber companies, they know that I'm going to cull it out. I'm going to return the stuff that's bad. So they're going to have a better quality of lumber. Plus, it's what they do for a living. These lumber companies, they don't sell plants and appliances and everything else. They only sell lumber, and they sell it to general contractors. And that's where you want to buy your lumber. You buy your lumber where I buy my lumber, because they are addressing the market, and they know that if they try to do it the way the box stores are doing, they'll go out of business. So just a tip. I'm just saying that's where you go. And when you buy anything, you do that. Now, does Home Depot have a good selection of electrical and plumbing fixtures? I guess they're okay, but I typically will go to a lighting store. They've got these big lighting companies, and they deal primarily with commercial vendors, commercial. And I'm not talking about commercials in commercial buildings, but their clientele are commercial operations. They're businesses. They're not homeowners. So that's where I buy my light fixtures. I buy my plumbing fixtures. Couple of places. For plumbing, I pretty much use Kohler for everything. And my favorite toilet is a Kohler Cimarron cylinder flush toilet. It's about $260. You can buy them at Home Depot. It is an incredible toilet. I don't use wax rings anymore. I use those new rubber rings where you can reuse them. And that way, if you don't have tile going right away, you got a toilet that works. And then when your tile goes in, pull that toilet out and you can reuse the ring. But I mean, it's just, I use a Kohler because it's comfort height, it's cylinder flush, it's strong enough. You could, with a gallon flush, you can flush a child with that thing. It's a really good, solid product. And it's not that expensive. You're not paying $800 for a toilet. You're only paying $260 for a toilet. So, I mean, these are things that are important for you to know, is where you get your materials. Tile and flooring, you can get pretty much anything you want. And I believe me, the demographics are going to vary with my audience. But for your typical, $500,000 to $800,000 house, you're going to pay maybe between $5 and $8 a square foot for floor tile or flooring. That's about where you're going to be, and so just adjust yourself to that, to that number. Can you spend $20 a square foot? Of course you can. But is it going to benefit you? I mean, nobody, unless you're going to leave the price tag on it, when somebody walks in, they're not going to know the difference. I remodeled my house, and it's elegant. It's gorgeous. It looks beautiful. Like I said, I've got 2 grades, A and F, and it's A all the way through. And I think my flooring cost me $3.75 a square foot. It looks great. It's just make sure you get the right stuff. Make sure that you, do some research. Do some research on what you want. But so when it comes to labor and materials, it's important that you don't go cheap, but it's also important that you don't, pay out the nose just because I guess what I'm saying is high price doesn't guarantee quality, but it will guarantee you bust your budget. One other thing that I'm going to talk about real quick is let's talk about cabinets just for a second. I touched on this, and we talked a little bit about the hardware last time, but everybody you talk to is going to say that they have all wood cabinets with full extension hardware and soft close doors and drawers. Okay. So there are a lot of different levels of the hardware, and we talked about that, but let's talk about whether you should go custom or box cabinets. Now, if you put it that way, and I've talked to my clients and they go, well, man, box, I'd much rather have a custom cabinet. And there are 2 aspects to custom that I don't like. The first one is a custom cabinet is not built as well normally as a box cabinet that's manufactured. It's just one of those things. It's going to depend on how good your trade is. It's going to depend on whether that cabinet installer and manufacturer is tooled properly and has a miller, if they're cutting stuff on, a table saw, or I'm not saying you have to have a CNC machine, but at the same time, there are levels of quality that you want in your house that only a manufactured cabinet can give you. So my solution to that is this. What I do is I offer a hybrid solution, a mixed solution. And the reason I say it is this. I don't need my custom cabinet guy to build me a 36-inch sink base. It's just a 36-inch cabinet with 2 doors on it, and my sink and all my plumbing is going to go under there. There's no point. I can buy that. My cost somewhere between $300 and $400. If my custom guy builds it, he's going to build it for $800. So there's no point doing that. So what I do is on the standard size customer, and most of what you're going to get is going to be that way. Your wall and base cabinets, I buy those from a manufacturer. And every now and then I'll have one. Let's say I've got a double oven that's going to go in with a microwave, and I need to custom build something, or I have an island that I need a very special cabinet built. Then I have my custom cabinet guy build it, because all these folks can match whatever style you've got. Whatever you can imagine. And a lot of times you could talk to the manufacturer and they'll tell you where to get those tools so you get those bits and get the same face, so it looks the same. But I've never had any trouble matching it, but I go with a hybrid. And the reason I do that is because it saves me 50% on cabinet cost. I get a beautiful cabinet that's done and the reason I say that is if I'm going to go custom, my custom cabinet guy has a mill. He's got a cabinet workshop. He's got CNC machines. He is incredible. And I'm telling you, top of the line. But a standard kitchen, my cost on cabinets, let's say, is $25,000. It's going to cost me $60,000 for him to build it if he builds every cabinet. But if he's only building 2 cabinets or 1, or maybe some shelving that goes with it, it's not going to cost me that much more. So it's important that you do that, but make sure when you're picking your manufacturer, make sure that you're using the proper hardware, and you want to see that. You want to make sure that it is all wood, but make sure the all wood isn't just birch or mahogany. Make sure that it's a maple cabinet, or if you like oak, that's fine. Maple, hickory, whatever it may be. Go with an upper line species of material on that. And so the last thing I'm going to talk about today, and before we go to episode 4 with the next one, is this: the question of employees versus subcontractors. I signed up a job a couple days ago, and one of the things they told me is, they said, well, we had a little bit of a problem. I met them at the trade show, and they said, we have a little bit of a problem with the fact you said you use subcontractors. I said, okay, I hear that every now and then. What is your biggest concern about that? And they said, well, subcontractors are expensive, and I'm not sure about their quality, and I just know with an employee there, you can manage them better, and they'll do what you say because you're paying them by the hour. I said, I have heard that before. Now, let me share with you the truth and the reality of what it is. I use exclusively subcontractors as a builder. Now, I realize you're DIYing this, but let's say that you got the guy saying, hey, I want to come to work for you. And you go, okay, well, he's going to charge me $16, $17 an hour, and he's going to come do those little things I don't want to have a subcontractor doing. It's going to save me some money. Okay, that's fine. The reason I, as a builder, use subcontractors is this: because all of my subcontractors manage a bottom line. The reason they manage a bottom line is because they're running a company, and I am their customer. I am one of their biggest customers in their company. So they value my business. And if at some point I put them on my no vendor list, it takes a big bite out of their bottom line. So they are more motivated to do the things I want to do and that I want them to do. So let's take an employee. So you're paying that employee $17 an hour. They come on board. And let's take it from a builder point of view. So I'm using exclusively employees. These guys work for me. So I bring them over. So this employee has a bad morning, whatever it may be. Maybe he drank too much over the weekend, or he's having a fight with his wife, and he quits. So he's quitting a $17 an hour job, and he's probably going to take my tools and pawn them because he knows he's not going to get much of a check on Friday, being that he quit. That is what you can expect, worst case scenario. With a subcontractor, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is you have recourse, because I recommend you contract all of these subcontractors. I don't care who they are. Get a contract between you and them, excuse me. Talking too much in no water. Make sure you have a contract between you and them. It has a scope of work, price, usual customary draw schedule, and a release of lien. So in the scope of work, if they don't perform that scope of work, and always reference the technical drawings, make sure that they do it that way. And if they don't, you can fire them. But the thing is that they're going to be more motivated to finish the job because you're giving them a draw schedule. They've got some skin in the game. They've got let me put it this way. They are more accustomed to completing jobs and running their business than the employee is at making it to work every day. So that's where it is. And typically, if you want somebody to be insured, if you've got employees, well, you're going to have to insure them. And I'm talking about you as a DIY. You're going to have to insure them if you want them insured. They're not going to insure themselves. Most of these subcontractors will be insured. And so that's one thing to think about. It's a side note, but it's one that I was asked. So anyway, we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover today. And I might have left a few things out, but we're running a little short on time right now. I just want to make sure that when you go into this thing, you hit the main points. Make sure that you buy all your finishes up front before you start the project. Do not demo until your cabinets are on the ground. If you're doing a kitchen, do not do it. Make sure those cabinets are there. Make sure that you got all of them are there and they're the right color, and you have all your pieces and parts. Make sure they're there. Second thing is, when you're picking your trades, don't go with logo vans. Don't go with the people that don't necessarily have a manufacturing connection. You want to make sure that don't put any Goodman equipment in. I gave you some some questions and some interview tips you can use with your different trades, your painters, your carpenters, that kind of thing. Make sure that you do that. Ask them those questions. If they have any trouble answering any of those questions, they are not what you need. You want the best. You're going to be paying good money for this, for these folks. Make sure you get your money's worth. And if they don't know how long an 8-foot stud is, send them down the road. I knew that when I was 16 years old. Send them down the road. That is basic stuff they should know. If they don't know how long a stud is, how are they going to figure out how they're going to cut the roof? I don't know, whatever. But anyway, if you're doing the roof, the last thing I will say is this: commit yourself to your budget. We talked about this last episode. If your budget is $100,000, accept the fact that you are going to spend $100,000. You're going to invest that in your property. Don't try to save $200 here, $50 there. When you have, what I do with my trades is I tell them, look, this is how much money I'm going to pay on this. Does that work for you? You don't have that. You don't have that luxury because you don't know what it costs to build things. That's one of those things you're not going to have. So just make sure that when you do have somebody that's going, that when you're doing something, you stick with your budget, is what I'm trying to say. Is just make sure that you don't exceed your budget. Everything has to do with the budget, and make sure that you don't try to save money on it. Do not save money on your budget. Understand you're going to have to pay your trades a certain amount, and just pay them that way. If you try to short them $200, I had a general contractor I worked with, and he would do that. He would short them $200 or $300. I said, hey, we have this in the budget. We've got $1,500 for this in the budget. And he goes, I think he'll do it for $1,200. And I said, come on. His name was Bob. I said, Bob, this guy needs the $300 more than you do. Let him make some money on this job. Let him go home and feed his family. Stop trying to rip him off. He's not going to be happy. And you'll find that a happy worker and a happy subcontractor is a productive and a skillful contractor or worker. You just need to make sure you do that. So again, commit to your budget. Once you have your drawings, you get your budget, commit to it. You're going to spend the money. You must spend the money. It's the only way that's going to succeed. It sounds a little counterproductive and counterintuitive, but it is the rule, as real as the law of gravity. Okay, y'all. Well, I appreciate it. And here in the next week or so, we're going to drop number 4, and that's where the rubber meets the road. We're going to be covering production, the order of things, how, pardon me, how you manage these folks without having a lot of experience in their trades to make sure that they're doing things you need done the right way. Do you need outside inspectors to come in and make sure things are going on? We're going to cover all of this. So until we speak again, I appreciate you, and we'll talk later.